Thank you for coming to this interview. Really appreciate it. So why don't we start by you giving us a little bit of backstory to like who you are, where are you writing music, when did you start Petite League, stuff like that.
I'm an American, but I grew up in Belgium.
Oh, cool.
So my dad works for NATO and stuff, so we were abroad. And but I went to like a kind of American school, like an international school. And then for college, I went to Syracuse for school. So that was like the first time I'd really like lived in the US.
Yeah.
And I guess like pretty early on, we were starting to go to like basement shows and stuff, which I don't know if that's a thing at USC, but in Syracuse and upstate New York in general, it's kind of like a big like DIY house show scene. So we started going to a lot of those shows as freshmen. And then my sophomore year, a bunch of my friends started a little band called Conroy Blanc, which is like kind of like a goofy like surf rock band. And I'd been in bands in high school and stuff, so I was like really into music, and I was also in like a music business program when in college. So I was just like really trying, like itching to like be in a band, because I was doing like solo stuff that was fine, but it wasn't like fulfilling like the itch that I needed or like to scratch or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess by my junior year, I figured out how to record like electric stuff, which I never really done myself before, and I figured out it was pretty easy. And I just started like recording like the day I borrowed someone's interface and started recording, and that was like my junior year of college. And I only knew one drummer, and it was my friend Henry. And then from that point on, like since then, we've kind of been doing it since 2014 together, more or less. I kind of write everything and record everything but drums, and he's like my drummer rock. And then so another year of school for my senior year, and then 4 years in New York, and that's kind of like the very shortened version of what this band's been doing.
That's cool. And so did you start writing music just by yourself when you were in high school?
Yeah, so I had this kid who, one of my best friends growing up, and he lived like 3 houses down, French speaking kid. I went to like a French school, like like a Belgian public school for the first till I was like 13. So I was like fluent in French, and he was like this neighborhood kid that I used to hang out with, and we used to like, our thing was like basketball at first, and then I wasn't really good at basketball at a certain point. I started playing music, and he was playing music too, and he was like into kind of like cheesy pop music, but he was like a really talented singer. And I was just like, I was like too timid to sing. So I was like playing guitar a lot, and then I started writing music a lot, and then we started a band together, and that was like the band I was in from 8th grade till my senior year of high school. So we kind of like learned playing together, and so like I've been writing music since I was in 7th grade. Like I never really was into like covering music. I really always thought it was easier to just like, instead of like learning something, is just to like invent it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I was like writing a lot, and then so I've been doing this for like actually like a few years, over a decade.
Oh wow.
And I've just always kind of enjoyed doing it on my own, and then like every time I've tried to be in a band, it gets like complicated. Like I feel like I get pulled in different directions, and I kind of just like the focus of writing alone. So even though Petite League is like a band, it is really just me writing, and then I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know how to drum at all, and you have some good ideas. Like, let's like work together on this. And that's pretty much like how this, like the dynamic of it all works, is like me alone a lot until the very end. And it's like, okay, let's work together.
Yeah.
That's like how I like to work, really.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question, was how Petite League kind of formed. Like it was like your idea, but do you think that having, like your friend who's a drummer and like having other people work on it, to go through the process of releasing the music at the end, do you think that what you thought you wanted ever changes because of that?
Not really. I mean, like I'm so like a little bit like maniacal about everything. Like I'm involved in everything, like from the artwork, the promotion to like, and that was like the reason I went to school for music business, whatever that is. Like, I just kind of wanted to, I was always doing this in high school. Like when MySpace was around, I was like one of those fiends on MySpace. I was like in middle school, and I was just like adding everybody and like, yo, stream my like weird demos. And I had like 15,000 friends on MySpace. Wow. So I've always kind of enjoyed the grind of it as much as I enjoy like, I think the reward's greater when it's like I've done the work and now I've like learned the business side. I'm like trying to push it and do all these things on my own. And then it just feels more rewarding when it's like, cool, like everything worked out. I did my job like well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I mean, you know, we've never signed or anything. We've pretty much always worked alone. Like we have an agent who isn't really doing anything now, but
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much like the extent of the team.
That's cool.
And it's just kind of me. So maybe it's a selfish thing where I just like, oh, I'm gonna take everything, and like all these things that happen are like because of me. But
Yeah, but
I
I
just
think
love,
that
I like
it's
being involved.
I think it's like admirable that you have such a distinct vision and like the ability to kind of, you know, do what needs to be done in order to make that come to life. And
Thanks.
so did you do the artwork for the new single?
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't do the album art, which hasn't been released yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I every single that's going to be coming out, I did the artwork for, and I've done that with pretty much every album except for the last one. This painting, I just have the record here. This painting was my roommate,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's I just like being involved in that, and like I guess like my side thing is like graphic design, so I just kind of like incorporating those things and kind of building like an aesthetic out of stuff. So yeah, like I've met people before who were like, you should really just like start making t-shirts and stuff like full time, or like, you know, do more t-shirts that aren't related to the band. And I was like, yeah, but like, why not combine those two? And like,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I'm like I'm totally like self-trained design artist or whatever, or illustrator. I don't really have like any training in it. I tried to minor in college and they're like, oh, it'd be really hard. You have to like apply for these things. And I'm like, all right, never mind. I'll just like figure it out on my own.
Well, I really love the new artwork, so
Thank you.
good job on that. And so this is kind of just like baseline question, but why don't you talk a little bit about the new release and like kind of where the writing came from, what your inspiration for it was?
Yeah. I had started writing very, not like super intensely, in like early 2020. So like in January, I'd started like, I came back, I went home for a little bit and I came back thinking, like, cool, like it's, you know, it's time to start like piecing something together again. And I had one song that was like in the works, and then COVID hit, and my plan was, we were on tour in early March, and my plan was after that tour was like, all right, I'm gonna buckle down and like write an album, and you know, it'll be springtime and it'll be great. And then everything changed pretty
Yeah.
quickly, and I kind of just, it was like the first time I was writing a record that I felt like I wasn't reflecting on something in the past. It was kind of like in the moment, like every single day was like, or every week that would go by, things were changing so quickly, and my life was getting thrown around in weird ways, and everything was just like, all the feelings and everything were so raw and like so omnipresent that it was easy to write a record in a present tense, which I'd never really done before. And so it's not necessarily like, oh, this is like the COVID album. It's just about like, I think there's a general theme. It's just about like a lot of self-reflection, but self-reflection that's still ongoing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like, and the reason the record's called Joyrider, which is the same name as the song, but I think a lot of it was like seeking out pleasure and like finding something to kind of like get myself or anybody would need to get through this time. And it was really hard here in New York. It was like for, I mean, I'm sure, I mean, in LA, I don't know if you're from LA, but I know it's kind of similar, but we were like, my neighborhood was hit really hard. Like there's a hospital down the road. And there were like the trucks, you know, full of bodies. And like, that was like on my way to the post office, like every day when I'm like shipping records. And I'm like, it was just like very much in the thick, like US was the worst hit country, or is the worst hit country. This is the worst hit city. And I was in the worst hit neighborhood, in the worst hit borough. And it was just like, it was so real and so exhaustingly like draining. But at the same time, like I just felt like I had to do something and write about it. And I don't really know, like I'm still kind of processing it. I'm still going through it. So I feel like I'm not like totally ready to be like, oh yeah, this is what this means. And this is what this means. It's just like kind of like a lot of like overflowing feeling, and just like, this is what I was going through and am going through. So maybe in like a couple years, like I'll have a good answer of like, oh, this is why I wrote that. But I think for now, it's mostly just like daydreaming about feeling good, or like finding the little calm in a chaotic thing. And yeah, like there were weeks on end where I just didn't leave my room, and like that is calm in a way, but it's like this like chaotic neutral that was weird. So like, yeah, writing in that sort of environment was strange, but honestly, in a good way, like, and if you can find any like silver lining and stuff, I think that there's something good about it, because I think otherwise I probably would have written a record that wasn't as interesting. I think this is our best work, or I guess this is my best work and Henry's best work. Like we really like, there was like pent up energy that just needed to like get out. And I think that if this all hadn't happened, I don't know what we would have written about. Like I've been feeling I was feeling a little bit like dried up before all this happened, and then it happened, and then everything just felt like too real in a good way and a bad way. But
yeah, I think this is definitely like a very distinct moment that we're all living in, where it's impossible to ignore the current situation of like the day to day, and especially like where you are, where you're literally seeing it like physically in front of you. It's like, how could you make any sort of art or any sort of content that's not influenced by it?
Absolutely. And I think that was another thing that was awkward at the beginning of this, when a lot of bands like delayed their releases. So I'm really glad I didn't have an album like ready to go, because I just, it wouldn't have felt right. Just like this, when the George Floyd stuff happened and the protests were like at full blown, when you would see like a weird article on Stereo Gum about some like 3-piece white boy band from like, you know, LA putting out a single, I was just like, this feels like terrible. And this feels, and the content wasn't relevant. And not to say that you have to write music that's so current event based and whatever, but I think it like, I'm really glad that I was able to take the time period that we are and we're living in, and be like, this is what we're writing about. This is how I feel. This is like, this needs to get out there, because I feel like anything else would feel fake. Anything else would feel like it's like watching a movie now, when you see people kiss in a movie, or strangers hug, or like shaking hands at a business meeting, and you're just like, that doesn't happen anymore. Like, it doesn't feel like a reflection of reality anymore. And I'm not saying that my album is like a perfect reflection of what life is like now, but I think it at least it is a glimpse into how I was feeling in the spring, which is I don't know. I'm just glad. I'm just happy that I was able to capture a moment and just be like, this is what I felt in that time period.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to pretend like things are okay, and it's okay to pretend like things are okay. That's the other thing, is like, there's nothing wrong with indulging in music that isn't doomy and gloomy. And I don't think this record is doomy and gloomy either. I think it's not necessarily sad either. It's just kind of like what it is. Like, I don't necessarily feel sad about where we are right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel okay, because I'm getting used to it. And I don't mourn like an old, like, I don't mourn last summer. I'm kind of just like, this is the new summer, and you have to like kind of live in it and feel it, and you have to feel it. And if you aren't feeling it, then you're not really in it. And if you're not really in it, you're not really paying attention. And it's like an easy way to spiral out of control with your thoughts. But yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think it's such an interesting time to be living in, and it's like, I'm kind of like trying to absorb as much of it as I can while it's happening. And it's such an interesting time of change, and it's like, things are never going to be the same, but it's not like that's like a bad thing. Like things needed to change, and things are changing, it's like we are having casualties on the way, which is really sad, but it's such an important time. So my next question was going to be just kind of your general process of songwriting. How do you think that this current situation, with quarantine and Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on, I know here in LA we're also having really big issues with bands that have abusers in them, and like women coming forward. And so how has like all of this affected, or do you think will affect, your songwriting and how you kind of function as a musician and as a band?
I don't know. It's like hard to say like what the next step of this will look like, because there's some people that like write a song every day and like try to keep it going, but I like shut down. Like, I haven't written a song since I finished. And I think it's because if I keep doing that, I'm going to keep writing the same song, and then I'll just make the same song better and better. But I don't really like working like that. So I don't really know how this like is generally all going to like shape up and like where I'll be or where everyone's going to be at the end of it. Cause I don't really see the end yet. And I feel like, I don't know. It's a good point. I feel like with the stuff happening in LA, like, I mean, it's so tough to be a part of a scene like that. Like you know, and LA, I don't really know that many people in LA. Like I have my friends in LA, but I don't know like musicians and stuff. Like I knew some of those bands, like kind of, but yeah, it's just weird to be a part of something like that. And I honestly have never really felt that attached to like a scene or like the music, you know, the camaraderie of like white dudes and bands. Like I don't really believe in it. I don't really like hanging out with band dudes. I like hanging out with my band, and I like some of my friends are musicians and stuff, but I honestly don't really care for the bromance aspect of it. And so when I see that stuff happening, I'm like, I mean, like, oh, you guys are losers. Like, I don't know. It's weird because it's like some of these bands, like you see all the time, and you're like, you don't really even think about it that way. And honestly, at this point, like when I see people like that, I'm just like, oh, what have they done? Like what? And I'm not to say that like not everybody has done something messed up in their life and learned from it, but it's just a drag. Like honestly, I don't know, that whole thing with like Burger and all those like bands. Some of those bands I really like. Like I really like the Growlers. And then I read about it and I'm like, oh, like this sucks, you know. But I don't. That wasn't even like a proper thought that I just said, but that's just how I feel about it all.
Yeah, I think like for me, I grew up, like my first job was at Burger Records, and like, when I was like 15. And so I definitely like grew up on that whole scene, but like hearing all the things that are going on and seeing all of that, like I feel like I have no problem with just being like, yeah, like those dudes, you know, like, I'm just gonna like, that was a big part of my childhood, but it's up and I'm gonna move on. Like there's no point in mourning over bands like that.
Yeah, I feel like when I was younger, I was more prone to defend people that I didn't know. Like, you know, like it's complicated or whatever. And just as more and more of this stuff happens, and more of these like supposed like heroes that we have, you know, in bands or people who are like TV actors or whatever the fuck, like I don't need to defend these people. I don't know these people. I have no reason to defend them, and I have no reason to not believe anybody. And I'm just like, I'm living in my own world. And if like some people are going to do fucked up shit, it's my job to be like, hey, we're not like that, and we don't do that. But I don't know. It's hard. It's fucked up. And I'm sorry that I don't know if you had any bad experiences with Burger, but I've had friends like that put out stuff with them, and they were just like, this sucks. Like this is a bad deal for us, and that's all I really know about them. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole thing's it's outdated too. It's an outdated scene, so needed to end. All right, so my next question is, with your upcoming release, and well, I guess your single included in that, what are you hoping for people listening to it? Like, what's one thing that you hope everyone who listens to it takes away?
From the single?
From the single or the album, up to you.
Yeah, from the single, I think it's just like, the reason I wanted to put it, I think that there's a lot of songs on the record that are like super a new direction for us, which is, I think everyone says that all the time, but I'm pretty simple like musician, like the 3-chord like power pop like distortion voice sort of thing has always been my thing. But I think that my takeaway I hope that people have here is that this is probably like the best version of what we can do. And it's like it really, and I know like some people really have like a fondness for the old stuff, which is cool, but I just hope that people understand that this is like we have my friend Jonathan, who is an incredible musician, and he like just took a look at the tracks before we put them out and was just like, okay, let me just fix these little things, which I've never done before, and was able to like bring the production level up another level and just like make the parts that I knew I was recording but didn't have the technical ability to make sound like that. He was able to like bring it out, which is so relieving, you know, like I'm not good at it. And so I'm glad that I was able to be like, hey, can you just help me? I can't do this. And so there's a lot of that on this record where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I tried my best, but can you help me with this? Like, just make it, you know, package it right. So I hope people understand that that's what happened here. It's like, this is like what I always wanted this band to sound like. And especially with the song, I think it's like so prototypical of everything like I've tried to put out before, or I have put out, but it's like, to me, it's like the best version of that. And I mean, honestly, like the response has been crazy. Like we've gotten so much good, like such a good response from it all. And I'm just like so happy, you know, and not that we usually get like bad responses, or at least that I see, you know, like everyone's super nice. But this time it just felt a little different.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I was hoping for. I was like hoping people would be like, oh shit, they did take it to that next like level. And I honestly, it wasn't even me. It was probably just John who was able to like mix it and master it in a nice way. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool that you were able to, you know, like kind of get it to where you wanted it to be finally.
Yeah.
So for this new release, if you could have one band cover the song that you just released yesterday, what band would it be?
Oh my God. God, that's a great question. I've never heard anyone ask that question before. Well, you know what? There's a band. Okay, so do you know Superchunk?
Mm-mm.
So they're like a older band. They've been around for a while, and I am like not super aware of them, but I've been. People keep comparing them to me and us and the sound that we're doing, and I listen to the songs. I'm like, yeah, totally. Like this is like I am not ripping it off. I just don't know them, or whatever. But their music is great, and they just have like they've figured out like the formula for like that catchy power pop song. So that would be cool. I'm just like a sucker for like the Replacements stuff, like Paul Westerberg, like all that like kind of 80s production value. I think it'd be cool. I don't know. It's a cool question though. I don't think anyone would cover it because it's like what old band are covering new songs other than like Johnny Cash doing like the Nine Inch Nails stuff. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, cool to think about, I guess. Okay, last question. If you obviously probably would never happen, but if you were going to throw a record release party for your upcoming record, what would your theme be?
Theme? Yeah, you know, that's another thing is like we usually for like the first 2 records it was like baseball, or the first 3 records like super baseball. Or actually, first 2 big baseball energy. The third one would be like rainbows was like a big thing. I was just like really into these like cool Japanese baseball cards that are like pogs, and they had that sort of like this, I don't know what's it called, like this sun ray design, and I was just like, oh, I want this like. Honestly, it kind of sucks because Bon Iver was doing it too with the rainbow on black, and I was just like, I'm kind of doing this too, but he's doing it a different way. But that was like a big thing, and then like I feel like our release party for that record was like a snake with a rainbow and stuff. So I was like really going the rainbow thing. And then our last record was like the circular rainbow with like horses and like more like it was too close to like when everyone was like, I'm a cowboy thing. There was like a big cowboy thing going around.
Yeah.
So I was really trying to downplay the cowboy part, but it was probably a cowboy influence thing, or at least like a Western. And then this one, I think I'm just like the Joyrider part of it is just like, I don't even have a driver's license. So it's more, it's about like being a passenger in a car. So like it's like the idea of like driving a car and like a motorcycle and just like the super freeing aspect of like just driving really fast and out of, you know, your mind.
That's cool. So if you were going to wear a costume to this party, what would your costume be?
Oh yeah. I bought this shirt on eBay. Actually, you know what? This is totally like, I'm realizing as I'm saying this, but I went to Gov Ball last year, which I don't know if you know about Gov Ball. It's just like a big festival in New York for, I don't know, big music acts. And I saw Julian Casablancas play with his other band. And he was wearing, so it wasn't the Strokes, which I was trying to see, but they were playing way later. And that show ended up getting canceled. But he was wearing like this old motocross thing. And like that motocross aesthetic is fucking awesome. So like the day after I went to see him, and I went on eBay and I bought this like really cool Honda like motocross like undershirt, and then I got it and it fits really weird. So that would be what I'd be wearing, but also I'd be like totally ripping him off, so I wouldn't do that. But if I had to pick a costume, that would be a relevant costume.
Awesome.
Probably.
All right, so those are all my questions. Thank you so much for this interview. Yeah, if you want to plug anything that you want to plug for this video, go ahead.
We got a new single out called Joyrider. We have a little label that Henry and I run called Zap World Records, and we've released just one other release other than our own, and it's this kid, Connor, who goes under the name Pistol Gang. And he's from Kalamazoo, Michigan, which I didn't know was a real place. and he put out a really cool record that he let us release for him. And yeah, that's one thing. And then we also work with this other, I work for a label called Solitaire Recordings, and we put out this record by John, the kid who mixed and mastered our record. And it's called Cannibal House Rules, and it is truly one of the best records I've ever heard. And like for real, like it's like amazing.
Cool.
So I guess I just plug their music and the new single, and I don't know, whatever we're doing.
All right, awesome. We'll probably link those in this
Okay,
video
cool.
if we post it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Sure.
All right. Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.